Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 249. I'm delighted to welcome back onto the podcast. It's another hat trick. Matt Willmott, how are we doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me back. I didn't think I'd get the call after the first and second one, but yeah, delighted to get the hat trick.
I need to get some match balls sent out, don't I? Celebrate that hat trick. Anyone that didn't listen to our previous episodes, I was looking back at some dates. You were back on the podcast on episode 51. And correct me if I'm wrong, we spoke about how much we can push players. And it was all around the load that we exert onto players in that podcast. We then spoke again, episode 179. That was a little bit more around fitness versus freshness. That was obviously in a chaotic period, wasn't it? Sort of the backlag of COVID and fixtures coming out of your ears. Like, it was a bit of a crazy time. So we spoke a bit more about that. But what I wanted to jump into today is more about culture, building culture, something that gets spoken about a lot, and programming as well, and the sort of relationship between the two. So when we talk about that, Matt, where does your mind go initially in terms of developing culture with your players, where you're going into a club or you're going into a role, and how that relates to a program as well?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think culture is definitely like a real buzzword at the minute. I think it is so important whenever you go into a new club or you start a new role, or you get new players in, that they understand the culture that is set. I personally think that culture is the most important thing that you can have. I truly believe that the culture and the environment that you set, getting players that are responsive and willing to work, or players that want to come in, take ownership on their physical work. I think that is really the most important thing, and it really kind of gives you endless opportunities then to build on. We're quite fortunate as practitioners, I think, that there's so much information out there for us. Whether that's academic, the university courses that we all go through, whether that's journals, reviews, so many events out there. UKCA put loads on, the sportsman stuff, the podcasting stuff. Like, there's so much opportunity as practitioners to really learn the theoretical side and to really make sure we're nailing down the perfect program, as we all like to say we have, or the all singing, all dancing, brilliant looking, it's periodized to like finer details, and everything's manipulated perfectly, and you spend hours, don't you, on an Excel sheet, or if you're fortunate enough to have a bit more like other software stuff like Tableau, but you can really like come up with something that looks like the dog's bollocks, like, is brilliant. And you spend hours doing it. I've done it before, and then you get to the reality of football and working with people, whatever it is, and if the players don't actually want to like come in and do it, or the players don't really give you everything that you're kind of asking them for, it's kind of like a waste of time. It's pointless. It's like, it's a waste of ink on a bit of paper, and you're just wasting your time. So I do really believe, like, if you can get that culture in place, and we talk culture, and like I say, it is a buzzword, but I'm just talking about, are players like invested? Are they like there? Are they present? Are they wanting to be there? And are they like? Because I think we are lucky that we are now in a period where S&C, whether it's physical work on pitch, is quite accepted. Like, it's a normal part of training. It's like done thing. We're now getting to the point where the players have come through an academy system where S&C sessions are essential and they're non-optional. You have to do them to fit requirements for EPP or whatever it is. So they are used to doing sessions. So we just now need to make sure that they want to do them. We are getting them to a point where they understand what they should be doing, what they need to do, why they're doing stuff. Kind of taking ownership on their own sort of training, and kind of making sure that we're providing that platform, and I kind of want to make sure that I'm not being misled where I'm not saying the details aren't important, because I suppose essentially that is our job, isn't it? That our job is to make sure that the details are in the program, right? So we need to make sure that we are programming the right things at the right time for the right people. But we are physical practitioners at the end of the day, and I think like we need to be able to work with people and make sure that we are working on the gym floor or out on the pitch or wherever it is, and making sure that, you know, players are really responding to your program. Because like I say, if they come in and don't really give you the intensity, the intent, they're not really doing the volume that you're asking for, or they're not like lifting with the correct load, and they're kind of whatever's on the bar at the time, they just look up and go, yeah, that kind of looks about right. I normally do that, whatever, and just lift it and walk off. And you're not actually taking time to invest in the program and go, right, what did I do last week? How am I feeling this week? How busy is the schedule been? Where am I at in my own schedule? Have I got any pains, niggles that I might need to just think about, and kind of just start opening up those questions that they need to be thinking coming to the session. Because I do think we kind of in the past have spoon-fed players, and you know, they kind of just, they're used to things being prepared for them and just done, and you know, the bar being set perfectly for them, and they come in and they go, right, just do that and I'll lift that. Okay, I've just got to do that, fine. And then suddenly you're just like, all right, that just didn't seem like it was a worthwhile time. So I just think that, you know, if you gave me the option and had like a real stripped back program, didn't have all the bells and whistles that maybe some programs have, and fancy colors and lovely like graphs or whatever, and you just had like a player that was there going, right, let's work, let's do it properly, and they gave you everything, then you're onto a winner. Because then it's up to you and your coaching ability to then add the details onto that. Once you've got that sort of in place and that platform, that foundation in place, that the players are like really excited and kind of invested, then you build into the details. Then you use your coaching ability to regress an exercise or progress an exercise, changing up something on the spot that you see, looking at different ways and individualize the programs as best you can, and making sure that you're utilizing everything you've got around you. But at the end of the day, like, we're fortunate again to work at good clubs with a lot of facilities, but you're working like with a player. They're not robots, they're people. So I'm just really like conscious, I'm always conscious on how I coach, the environment that you set, how the gym, the pitch session, whatever it is, it's both in the gym and it's kind of out on the pitch, how those sessions are perceived, how they're sort of taken. And then you can, as I say, you just then add in the details after that. If you start with the details and the players look at it and they're like, oh, well, that's a lot, or that looks like complicated, I can't do that, because they're simple creatures. We're all simple creatures, I think, in football. We're pretty simple, and we like things quite straightforward. And once you've got that in place, then it's just down to you to do what you're there to do and coach and to add the detail after that. But you need to have the environment, the culture there, because, like I say, you won't be able to progress anything if it's not there.
100%. What interests me on this, because you mentioned players being responsive.
Yeah.
And I think within a squad, everyone can identify, regardless of what squad it is, you're going to have some players that are responsive to everything. They're going to put everything into training. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to probably bring you loads of questions. Then you're going to have some that sort of sit in the middle, that sort of turn up, go through the motions. You might have better days and worse days. And then you're going to have some that are probably the opposite, that are just not responsive. They want to be out on the grass or whatever, or they're demotivated at that time or whatever it is. So if we ignore that first group, the group that are going to just get things done,
the easy ones, yeah.
Yeah, what would you say your approach is, or even advice to coaches of working with those other groups?
Yeah, I think this is actually a bit where I actually think university degrees maybe, but a lot of the qualifications that you tend to do, they kind of miss this point, like the actual coaching skill. And like, like I say, we're working like one-on-one or in small groups or whatever it is with people, with players. And I kind of think it's that coaching eye, or like you say, it's kind of building relationships. It's like a real missing part of being an S&C coach or a physical practitioner or a sports scientist, whatever term you kind of use. You are kind of like a people person, like you're working with people. So I think it's like something that's so important that we need to make sure that you're developing is your ability to develop relationships with 25 different people. And like you say, knowing what type of player they are, where they fit in the squad, where they are in their career, what they need in terms of a little nudge or a little arm around them or whatever it is. Like, you've got to be able to like learn pretty quickly who needs what. Because if you go the opposite route and you do something that they don't like which I've done in the past more than like so many times, where you kind of 2-foot something and go in a bit too heavy and kind of give someone a bit of an earful, or you try to like banter them or whatever it is, and you end up losing them. Yeah. And then you're like done, because footballers are people that I do honestly believe like they're quite headstrong, and when they believe something and they know something, or they think they know something, they really do think that. And when you lose someone, I think it's such a hard skill to get back, and that takes a lot of time and effort. So I think it's that finding the balance of knowing when to push, knowing what that player is. Like you say, if you've got players that you might come out. Our gym sessions, so our pre-training sessions, tend to be straight after team meetings. So how that player has responded to that team meeting is varied 20 times, because we might have gone over a previous game where a player might have made a mistake that has led to a goal. So he just probably feels bad, bit mugged off, bit angry at himself, or angry at a coach that maybe has highlighted something wrong. You might have a player in there that wasn't on the screen because he wasn't selected for that game, or was sat on the bench at that time and thinking, like, this is rubbish, I should have been on a pitch, or whatever it is. You might have a player in there that's injured or coming back from an injury. You might have an older player that just knows what he wants and has worked in a certain way for 10 years and kind of gone, well, you're telling me to do all these new exercises with force platforms and gym awares and bungees and whatever it is, and he's just come from the days of just maybe doing some compound exercises, some Nordics, and he's kind of gone, that'll do me, I'm happy. Or we might not have done anything, and you're kind of introducing him to new things, and you've got to then build that relationship with him and educate him in a way that he's going, well, I haven't done this in 10 years and you're telling me to do this now. But you kind of have to build that relationship that way. So I just think it's a real missing part. Like, we're always taught the theory and we're taught the practical side, I suppose, on how to coach a lift, but we're never really taught the personal skills, I think that is something that comes with working, that comes with sort of trial and error, kind of see where players are and how players respond to certain things, and sort of then when you feel like you've got them and they've responded well to something, then you kind of then need to really reiterate that and set in those sort of culture stuff. And it's probably one of the hardest part of the jobs, like you're saying. It's having 20 different ways to coach, or 20 different ways to say one sentence, and it is difficult. I really think it is, and we're never taught it. So it's kind of just, as bad as it sounds, you kind of just have to learn on the job, and think the only way to do it is to work with people, not hide away from it. I see a lot of laptop hiders hiding behind their laptops. Someone I worked with previously at another club, he was massive against that. If he saw people in the gym, players in the gym, even if it was just some extra upper bodies that they wanted to do, or whatever it is, just some stuff that they wanted to do, and there was staff sat in an office behind a laptop, you would get an earful, and he would want you out there coaching. And I think that's what it is. Just don't be scared just to go out and coach and learn different ways of doing stuff and not be narrow-minded into one way. That is a large part of our job, is to be adaptable, right? So, like I was saying, you might have a plan, and then something might happen to a player that has set him off on a different mindset, and he might have something going on outside of football. He might have things happening inside of football. There can only be 11 players playing at one time, so you might have 60% of your squad pissed off because they're not playing. So you need to be able to be adaptable and just mold your coaching style and to around different sort of mentalities and different people, because they are, as I say, they are different footballers. Everyone's different. They're strange cats that you've got to get used to working with. That's for sure.
I think one thing you mentioned as well is that speed of recognizing whether it's characteristics or just maybe their perception of what you're going to be doing in your role. Because if we refer back to those three groups again, when you've got those players that are maybe disinterested or aren't quite as motivated, if you're not getting into them early, that's like the key time, isn't it? To try and, maybe they've had a bad experience of S&C sports science before, or a certain individual. You come in the door and it's got to be pretty quick, hasn't it? That you're going to try and get them round.
Yeah, you have to just work, and the players are quite easy. They just want honesty, and if you just go, look, I'm here to help you, and the only way that you're going to maybe get into the team is to be the best you can be, whether that's out on pitch, physically in the gym, physically on the pitch, technically on the pitch, whatever it is. They've got to be in an optimal physical state. And the only way of doing that is by doing the stuff that everyone's asking of them. And if we've got a program that we think is the best way of developing them physically, to make them stronger in an area, or all of our testing and our profiling, and we highlight areas that this is where we think you're lacking, or this is an area that we think we can really target as an improvement. This is going to help you, whatever it is, on the pitch. No matter what, if the manager at the time isn't quite thinking you're right for his setup, or isn't quite right time, or you're a young player that you just need a little bit of time developing, or whatever it is, this will help you on pitch. And I always say it's bad at the time, but you always say obviously we're working at a club, but there are, certainly one other league, professional league clubs. There's other clubs that are there. It's not just one club and one club only. You need to make sure you're ready that if something does happen, someone gets injured any minute, you need to be ready to then step in, because if you step in and you're deconditioned, or you haven't looked after your, tendinopathy because you're just pissed off, you've gone, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not playing, so what's the point? And then you get your chance and your knees sort of flared up, that ain't going to help anyone. So like you say, it's quickly just developing that relationship and quickly saying, we're here to help you, so you need to help yourself, type thing. And I think they respond pretty well to it. You just got to be honest with them. I will pride myself in being honest, and I tell them how it is. I try not to be a dickhead, but I'll try and be honest and say, this is what they're thinking, or this is a problem that the staff have with you and we need to fix it, or this is an area that they think you need to improve on. So let's work on it. So I think that that group, like you say, is so important, because I do honestly believe it snowballs pretty quickly. You have a small group of players, or a good group of players that are maybe out of the team or on the fringe of it, and they come off the bench and they might see another player doing a little bit more, or really lifting with great intent, and they're giving everything into their program, and they've probably then got half an eye on that, going, oh, am I lifting? Am I doing that? Am I training as hard as they are, or am I doing some extra conditioning after on the pitch? Am I making sure that I previously had a player that unfortunately just wasn't in the manager's plans. And he understood that, and he kind of accepted that. But we come up with a plan for him that he knew he wanted to get quicker. And we then sat down with him. We looked at the weekly schedules. Most weeks we sat and we knew when we wanted to get sort of sprinting exposure in on pitch, the stuff that we wanted to do in the gym that would supplement the pitch work. And he was just so like focused on that. And he's from what like he's doing well, and you know, he goes to another club, does well, and suddenly like a manager change happens and you're in the best position like you can be, because like we were just speaking before, like things happen in football so quickly. Like you can go from being like not in favour at all and kind of out of the manager's plans, and then something might happen, whether it's a change of manager or you change clubs, and suddenly you're flavour of the week, and you need to make sure you're on it at every point because things happen so quickly. So yeah, it's just making sure that you can kind of push those players, and it is a challenge because you're pushing, and they might not be playing, and you keep trying to work on it. But I think they're smart enough to know that at some point they are going to play. It's squad to squad for a reason, isn't it? And as much as our main job and our priority for getting programs in the gym, or our main priority is making players available on pitch, and making availability should be like the be all and end all. Like there's no point having someone that can counter movement jump 60 or 65 or whatever, and they're brilliant, and wow, look at him, he's rapid, but you can only train for like 2-3 weeks at a time, and then something strains or a previous injury happens. Or so our main job is to make the players available, but injuries do happen, and a squad to squad, because they do happen, and football's very difficult. It's physically very taxing, so they just have to they know that they're going to have an opportunity, and if once they get that opportunity, if they're not in any condition or any physical state to stay in a team, then you've lost them really, and you kind of, it's tough then to get them back. But I think it does snowball. Players, they do see other players doing stuff, and they're like, okay, I probably should start doing stuff, or interesting, he's doing it or whatever, and then that pushes maybe the starters, if they're looking at that going, all right, Jesus, he's having a go, isn't he? Like maybe I need to keep on top of what I'm doing and keep me like proper on it, and then you're building those like we're talking about that environment. You know, we call it like, it's like culture architects, isn't it? It's like the people that drive standards, that do it just by doing what they do every week, and they're consistent with it, and it just drives everyone to go in the same direction. And once you've got those, or the culture architects outbalance the players that are maybe less bothered, the sessions are easy then it snowballs, and they become the minority, and you can then really just kick on with making sure you're adding the individual details and sort of really working with players like one-on-one.
I remember David Moyes telling a story about when Phil Neville signed at Everton, and I think it was like him going in before training and doing extra, and at first it was like a reaction of like, what is he doing? Like coming in thinking he's big time and all the rest of it, and before you know it, players are all coming in at the same time, they're doing the work that he's doing. It's just had that knock-on effect, and then it becomes, you're a standout when you're not doing it then, aren't you? It just takes that time. And when we're talking about culture, obviously culture's a word that can probably mean 100 different things, but for me, when I look at things, I think that is it, isn't it? It's habits, it's things that you're doing on a daily basis. I remember doing an episode with Nick Grantham probably years ago now, and we talked about nudging the culture forward. And that's exactly it, isn't it? Putting certain things in that might not seem big at the time, but like you just said about things snowballing, that's exactly what happens, isn't it? And then things start to go.
It goes so quick, like you say, like just get easy wins. Like
yeah,
that's probably like the biggest thing that maybe I learned like a few jobs ago, a few clubs ago. Like say, you kind of go in and you have these grander ideas that are like, oh, my sessions are going to look like this. Everyone's going to be doing it. Everyone's going to be buzzing. It's going to be brilliant. And then the reality of it is, like, players are people and they're tired at times. Sometimes they come in and they've just had a really hard session and they're whatever it is, and they're struggling with different things. But if you can just get those easy wins by it might even just be you adapting yourself to them. A player can be in such a tough period of time, and we had a few players at Swansea that would be just playing and playing and playing, and they were very key members of the team, and they played like for years. Like the captain Grimesy, he was like for years he just played every game, 90 minutes. He trained like every day. He was like relentless, like so robust, always available. But it just like naturally that fatiguing element does take a toll, and like days he'll come in and he's like, mate, I'm toasted, I'm tired. Like we've had a few week period. We had like three week period where we've had 6 games. We've travelled loads. Location's an absolute killer, so we spent so much time on the road. And you might just then just manipulate and go, okay, right, this is the plan we had in place. But I tell you what, let's just work on these like 3 priority exercises. You might have priority work. You just go, I think you need to look after this because of this previous injury, or this is something that you're kind of monitoring and managing. This is quite a big exercise. So we can just do like these 2, and then maybe this one. Forget about the other 3 or the other 2. Let's leave them for another week. But you're consistently doing something each week and getting easy wins, because then it's kind of cash back. Like the next week when he's feeling a bit fresh, or he's maybe in a better mindset, or it's just anything, he comes in and go, you were pretty good to me last week. Like we changed it because I was honest with you. You were good. You manipulated it. I still managed. You still got the work in. Like I'm not saying we're going to take it easy. Don't worry about it today. Like you get yourself in the showers. Like it's not like that. It's like, no, let's just, what's important, let's just get that. But you've got to give me everything for those 3. And then the week after they remember that, and then they give you everything for all 5 or all 6, or whatever it is. And I just think those easy wins are what you can then, if you can get enough easy wins, like you say, it just snowballs. And then you just develop in a culture where players are coming in thinking about their body. Oh, I feel good today. Let's ramp up the load a little bit. I can really be explosive today. I feel good. Let's get after it. And they start kind of just, like I say, investing in their own physical ability, and investing in their program. What am I doing that's going to make me better? And I think once you get that and you get enough players doing that, the other players become a minority. And there are players that you will never get on board. Like I've worked with players that you know from time working with them, you're like, yeah, he's going to be tough. If it's an older player, like I say, coming towards the end of his career, if it's a player just not interested one bit, has had a bad experience, like you're saying, some of our bad experiences in S&C, whether they've hurt themselves lifting or they've done a session without really thinking about it and woke up the next day and DOMs up to their eyeballs, can't sit in the toilet, it's that painful, we've all been there, where you can't squat down, and they just hate it, and players just hate feeling sore, and then it really ruins them on pitch because they're sore, and once you lose them. But once you get enough people knowing it, consistently doing it, those sort of issues just become such a minor thing, and they're not really noticed. Like the other players never notice those players then not doing it because they're focused on them, or they're focused on the people that want to be in there, and you just build that nice environment where you've got loads of different things going on, chaotic environments. We all love it, where you just got players and music's going mental, and you just know there's people like having a good time in there and making it fun, because that's what we need as well, don't we? We need fun, like as practitioners. Like I don't want to be in there like tearing the air out, and I don't want like our coaches being in there arguing with players and having to battle with players. Like we need to just explain to them, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and you can change your coaching style, and like I say, once you get enough, you're winning, and then that's it. Then you've got them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that example you gave, the sort of words that define it is building trust, transparency, and it's just that it creates that honesty with players, doesn't it? Like you've been flexible and adaptable in the approach, but taught them why.
Yeah.
You're not just doing it for the sake of doing it and just just bending over for them. Like, it's not that. It's the fact that you're understanding where they're at. And then, like you say, that comes to reward you in the future, doesn't it? With the right lesson that comes with it, I think that definitely always comes back as a positive in the future.
I think we also test so much now. Like, we do so much testing that players and staff, we're all accountable for like making sure that the numbers go up, or the numbers aren't just constantly just going down, or whatever it is. So, and with that testing, programs are now becoming so individualized, and players are responding to that because they love that, really, don't they? If we just had a whiteboard, you know, those whiteboard sessions where you just write a generic session and the lads come in and just go, yeah, session's on the board, everyone's doing the same weights, the same whatever it is. They're just going to go, well, hold on, how's that going to affect me? I'm a 18-year-old centre midfielder that's, I don't know, 65 kg, can barely squat whatever it is, or can't lift this. And you're telling that big lump centre half over there that's 90 kg to do the same weights as me. And when we're then driven to individualise everything, and I'm 100% for that. And with that, you then, players respond to that so much better, that they're going, oh, I see, that's going to help me. This is where I'm down on the testing, because we test on a daily basis, really. You know, weekly is definitely, but 100% daily, really. Like, and we're constantly seeing changes. So we're constantly just adapting the program to the players, going, look, what we're doing is working. This is what you needed to work on. You're really good at this, but you're not quite as good as this. So we're still going to do the thing you're good at, and we're still going to make sure that remains a strength, but we really need to improve this. And whatever it is, you know, like I say, we've got so much technology these days with force platforms, force frames, equipment that we use, velocity trackers, you know, gym awares. We can really sort of mold our testing, and we go into such detail where players are profiled into such detail that across whatever curve, you know, force velocity curves, whatever people want to do, and everyone has their own individual ways of testing and sort of profiling. But you're kind of diagnosing areas of weakness and areas that we need to work on. And if you then talk to player, educate a player and go, look, what do you actually, firstly, what do you want to improve on? Like, what do you think you need as a player? Because they will have their own ideas. I need to be quicker, I need to be stronger, I feel like I'm not quite as powerful, or I can't do too much because of this previous injury, or whatever it is that I'm managing. I'm managing my pubic, I'm managing my knee. And then you go, okay, that matches up to what we actually found in the testing. Yes, you need to be a bit more powerful. This is the real high-end explosive work. That's what we're going to work on. And this is how we're going to do it. And then you kind of just, like I say, building that trust, and then they understand why they're doing something. And then once you've got that, it's easy then. And I just think we need to make sure we're using everything at our disposal. Like, I have been in times where players are kind of, you know, you've heard it and they've gone, we do all this testing, but I never actually see any of it. Like, you tell me that's good, or you might put a leaderboard up every now and then, but like, am I improving? Have I, like, what am I doing to help improve that, whatever it is? And I just think sometimes we just miss that really important time at the start of a cycle, or whatever it is, just sitting down with a player and going, what do you want to do? This is what we think you should do. Pair them together, look at the schedule. You kind of know roughly where players fit within the squad, who's going to be playing a lot of minutes, who's going to be maybe not featured as much, or it might be a young player that might just feature with the under 21 matches, but is kind of in his development mode. So we can kind of load him up a bit more and kind of go, look, you might not feel great during this period, and there might be times where you feel leggy, but it's going to help you so much, you know, sort of going forward. And you can kind of sit down and sort of say to the players, like, this is like our opportunities to work. This is where we're gonna, this is our window. And sort of just feel like, have them in the process. And I think that we are having players just a bit more responsive to that now. And I think it's, like I say, I think it is because S&C is accepted, testing is accepted. They know what they're kind of doing. They have a rough idea on the numbers, on what's good, what's bad. But I think they just want to be involved. And it's something that perhaps they feel like they can be involved in, because it will take a brave player, and I know there's probably some out there, that out on the pitch, manager, just stop right there. But I think we should be really doing it this way. And they don't really have any control out on the pitch, do they? Like, the manager has his tactics and his style of play, and has his people that he sees best fitted for that style, and whatever it is. They kind of can just train as hard as they can, and hope that they get the opportunity. But in the gym, or doing conditioning work, or if it's, they can kind of say, right, this is like how I think, this is what I kind of need, or like, I'm just struggling like in games to do like these repetitive actions. I just fatigue so quickly. So can we work on that after training? And you kind of we do end up being as like quite trusted with players, because I think they feel like they can talk to us and they can be open with us. And it's an environment where they can be themselves. Whereas I think they always like to, it's the whole thing, isn't it? I'm sure I'll go into it at some point about the mental health side, but it's kind of like players kind of have to feel like they have to show a certain persona out on the pitch or in front of the manager or in front of coaches, because they can't show weakness. Whereas I think they do show, or they do understand that with us and with physios and sort of performance practitioners, I think they can go, no, I'm not great at that. Like, I want to improve at that. Whereas I do think players are sometimes a little bit less accepted to go up to a coach and say, yeah, I'm not great at that tactic or whatever, because they're going to go, well, he's not going to play me then. So I just think it's having that environment where players are happy to know what they're good at, what they're bad at, and then sort of pairing it together and then coming up with the best plan of action. And once you've got that, I think then if they don't do it, you've got your argument already in stone, haven't you? You go, hold on, you agreed to that when we sat down, and I spent my time writing up this program that's going to help you fit into your schedule, work on your weaknesses. You need to give me something back as well, and you need to actually do it. Like, it's on you now. Like, I'll be there with you, and I'll make sure like we're doing it correctly. But at the end of the day, you need to lift it, and you need to run it. So you kind of then build in that like I say, that relationship, that trust, and that being able just to be honest with them and say, nah, let's do it, let's go. It's this is what we're doing, and let's do it.
I think it's a really important point, because when we're talking about buy-in, players will feel that power, I suppose, won't they, of being involved in that process, rather than having things, you used the analogy of the whiteboard before and just putting a session up there. They've had nothing to do with that. They don't really understand it. How is it relatable to me and them? Like, there's a lot of questions, isn't there?
Whereas that player-centered approach, isn't it? It's kind of, it's for the player. It's not, like, it's not for me. Like, like you might have a bit of pride looking at your program. Oh, yeah, that looks nuts. Like, that's the dog's bollocks. I'd like to splash that all over social media, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, that's good. But at the end of the day, it's for the player, and it's that player is then going to help the team. It's going to help the club, and going to help everyone progress forward. So, like I say, getting that buy-in is the most important thing.
You spoke before, though, as well, about the amount of information that's out there now and the resources that we have available as coaches. I also think that's been a positive for players, hasn't it? Because the understanding of players now, on maybe that's looking at what another team does. Like, you go on socials now, or well, any of the social media platforms, you can see what teams are doing in pre-season. Even if it's not giving the full detail, you get little snapshots of it. Whereas years ago, you didn't have that, did you? So players are becoming more understanding, and they're getting more educated just because there's more out there. Yeah,
it's like, it's everything, isn't it? Like, even like when you're seeing on matches these days, you get the little stats, don't you? Like, pop up saying, I don't know, Jordan Henderson did 12.5K, he needs to come off the pitch, or whatever it is. And players, are, like you say, are constantly then educated and reminded and going, well, actually, I only did 11K in my game. Like, of course, there's tactical things that happen and styles of players that really affect sort of distances on a pitch, but it's everything, isn't it? Or, wow, he can run quick, and is that what Speaks they do in the Prem? And you see that, like, you know, the top 10 fastest players in the Prem, you're going, oof, that's quick. Like that's what they do in the Prem, or whatever it is. It's just, like you say, it's just making players like so much more aware these days of the physical side. And that it's so good. Like when players come into you, go, oh, did you see that, or did you see this? And or it might be some social media exercise that, I don't know. Like I've had players coming in and showing me like some NFL player doing some mad stuff, and you're just going like, you're just building like interest in what we're doing. You go like, that's nonsense. He's like on a Bosu ball with a squat, with a chain around his neck, whatever it is. You're just going like, what is he in the circus? Like, no, this is what we do. Or he might go like, it might be something impressive. And I'm quite into my NFL, so I'll probably talk that. But it's like you see like the running back position, and then you see him squatting like obscene amounts, and they come in and go, wow, like they're strong, and you go, yeah, they have to be because of their position. Like we're doing this, and you're explosive. We make you really quick, and it's just like building interest and building conversation, and just making players aware and just just interested. And it's good because it's just helps you with the relationship. And you know, the worst thing you can have is a player that comes in, doesn't really want to talk. Right, what am I doing today? Then for done it. Right, see you later, and he's gone. Like, that's not an environment that's good for anyone. The players, the staff, it's just not fun for anyone. And like I like loud music. I like it busy. I like it chaotic. Get as many staff in there as you can. Just people just go in, and we kind of have their own programs. They're interested, and you kind of just creating this fun environments.
That was one thing actually I wanted to speak to you about. So obviously, as support staff, how important do you think it is that you get other staff involved? And obviously there's going to be other sports science, other S&Cs involved in the program. But beyond that as well, how important is it for technical staff to understand not every fine detail, but understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to create?
I think again, I think it probably has come from just the academy setups, that the MDT, the multidisciplinary approach, really has come through. It's kind of not just your program. You have input from the physio on a previous injury. You go, okay, he's kind of managing this, like, how can we manipulate what we want to do to make sure that we're getting what we want, but it's suiting him in his management or his coming back from an injury. It might be, like you say, the technical staff, like the manager, just coming into a few sessions and kind of seeing it, understanding it, getting their input on how they see. Like previously, I've had a real close relationship with the manager, so it's quite easy to sit down with him and say, like, these players, obviously you group them into like busy period of time fixtures wise, and we're kind of grouping these lads into, we're just going to tick them over, we're just going to manage them, we're still going to like be consistent in what we're doing, but we're just going to maybe change things in a little bit of a different way, you know, whether it's a pre-training isometric, or that's how we're just going to get our little bit in, and then in the afternoon it's purely non-fatiguing stuff. They've got a busy schedule coming up, so that's how we're going to do them. These lot, I think we see an opportunity to get some work in, so this is what we see them as athletes. He might go, yeah, I agree, I think he needs to work on this, or you know, one of the first coach or his assistant manager, who was brilliant at building relationships, was, yeah, I just think like he needs to do this, and this is what will make him sort of improve. And then you can go, okay, right, we'll do that. This is how we're going to make him stronger or more powerful, and then this is how we're going to then relate it on pitch and transfer it into an exercise onto the pitch, as part of your pre-training warm-up or a little conditioning session post-training or whatever it is, and sort of understanding. I think the coaches and the technical staff need to understand, like, we are really there. Like I say, our main thing is to make the players available on pitch. That's our sole objective. We then need to make them physically as an optimal condition, but they need to be available on pitch. And we then might have little windows of opportunity that we can work towards, and kind of it's then communicating that across to them that just say like, yeah, we've got a gym session here, we're going to do stuff after this game. We're going to load them quite up. They've got a day off after, so we're going to load them quite heavy after this game. And it's kind of just communicating that way. Be consistent with your program. The message from the coaches should be the same as what you're trying to say, that their S&C is important. You know, the previous man, he was so keen on just being everything individualized, everything, but he just really wanted it. And I think because he played at a really high level, and he sort of got good support, and he had like really a keen eye on his own physical ability, what he needed from an individual perspective, because he knew he didn't need the same as another player. And he was smart enough to sort of, you know, if they were trying to get him to do the same, you can say, well, no, I don't need that, and I prefer this type of stuff, and then you have the balance. So he really interested in the physical side and developing that. So the message has to be from top to bottom. So they're really important. Like I say, having the sports science staff and the medical staff that are involved in the design of the program, making them feel like they're part of the process, and making sure that everyone kind of sings off the same hymn sheet. It's all the things that we kind of know that everyone has to go in the same direction. And, you know, it needs to make sure that we are having the same type of coaching things that we're looking for, or whatever it is. It's just making sure that all staff, and like I say, it's staff being culture architects, and it's also the players being culture architects. It's kind of both. You need to make sure that you are kind of driving it from both sides, that the players are driving it and you're driving the players, and making sure that everyone is aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think it's also good, like, for the coaches. I think sometimes, like in my experience, they've enjoyed coming to the gym sessions. We're kind of in a time where managers are quite interested in the physical side and their own physical ability, and they're kind of used to being in the gym. We're kind of getting to that ex-player now, aren't we? Where it's like there's loads of ex-players becoming managers, and they kind of understand it in more detail. So having them in there and kind of players look, oh, the coach is in it. Oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, this is good. This must be important type thing. It's not just the coaches are important, only think about the gym and on the pitch, sorry. And then as soon as you come into the gym, they're like, nah, I'll just go upstairs or whatever and have lunch. But like just having everyone just pushing in the same direction. It's the same with analysis. I think like having like people in the team meetings. I used to go into a lot of team meetings. One, because I enjoyed it from the tactical side, just learning different bits. But it's also like if the players walk into a big team meeting, that they're going to look through the game and they see all the staff sat in the back few rows. They're like, oh wow, like everyone's invested in this. Yeah. Like everyone's kind of thinking, yeah, this is great. It's not just everyone in their individual things, like the coaches doing the pitch, and then we have the gym, and then the analysts have the lecture theatre. It should be like everyone kind of just enjoying being around each other. And once you have that type of environment, like it's just like it's so easy to get what you need to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. The other thing I was going to say is when you've referenced before about the chaotic nature of the gym and getting other coaches involved, they'll learn a lot, won't they, from how the players are in the gym? Because if anyone's done sessions with a group of players before, you suddenly see characters come out, don't you, in different ways, shapes and forms of how players react to certain challenges physically in the gym. And just coaches being in there, recognizing that. I'm not saying it's a direct transfer to what happens on the pitch, but there's a hell of a lot of lessons they could learn.
Yeah, like you get to see who's hiding. You like to see who your hiding players are. You like to see who your players are that are very quick to come in and get out, or the ones that take ages, or whatever it is. Like I've done it in a few different ways. I've had like set times. We're in the gym 1:30 till 2:30, whatever it is. Or I've kind of had it where it kind of flows, and you kind of say post training, we've got your S&C session, and it's up to them to kind of come in. And yeah, you might end up chasing a little bit, but it's kind of that short-term pain to then, once you've got them, they come in and it's fine. And there's no right or wrong to either. I like to say chaotic, the music to go in. You've got players doing loads of different exercises, coaches in there. You've got players that are kind of asking questions or taking interest into what they're lifting or what they need to set it up themselves, tidy it away yourself. Like, start learning like good skills and good characteristics of being a good teammate. Help your mate clean up a bar, or help someone set something up, or give someone a bit of encouragement when they're lifting something. And it's kind of like, I do think when you get those sessions, I just think it's great. And yeah, you get to see some interesting characteristics, some interesting conversations, and there's all sorts going on in those sessions, and probably not to be repeated on here, but you get to hear a few things that make you laugh. And we're simple people in football, and we just want to have good fun and like get good work in. And there's that enjoyment, I think. Once they know they're doing something that's going to benefit them, you just come out of it feeling so much better. I think we all do, don't you? Whenever you've done like a challenge or a hard training session or a really particular tough something that you're worried about, I don't know, it can be anything. You have that real satisfaction of completion, and that real release of just, I've like, you're hurting now, but later on when you're at home, you'll think, that's been good today. But I've got good work in. So it's just making sure that you're sort of setting those players just onwards, and just to give them the tools and just let them learn what they need to do. And we're just there to sort of facilitate it, aren't we? It's like, it's a real player-centered approach. It's not for us. I do try and make sure whoever like I'm working with, we just go, like, these aren't our sessions, like this is for them. So we need to make sure it's the environment that best suits them. It's not what's going to help you. And that's why I say give the players a stereo, like let them choose the music. Sometimes that can be a mistake because the music in football is horrific these days, and definitely not for my taste. But it's their session. So what's going to motivate them? It might be a certain song that you're going, this is rubbish. But if it makes them be explosive and just like want to be there and lift, you just go, all right, I can suffer with this for a bit of time. But as soon as you're out of here, I'm changing it and putting my old putting some proper song. They're going, what is this? Like, what is this? I've never heard of this. And you're like, oh my God. So they don't know yet. They little do they know.
Mate, that was absolutely class. I think there's so many lessons in that for coaches. The analogy I just kept thinking of is we spend so much time now, not just players, but everyone looking at devices, whether it's like Whoop or a Ring, and getting all this data on how we're feeling and how we should then go and train, all the rest of it. And I'm not saying that's not to be used, but a lot of what you spoke about is having those conversations and essentially getting that same information, but in more depth through conversation, through building this culture where players can be open and honest and come to you. And I think that's the job, isn't it, as the practitioner, to create those environments. Once those environments are created, players come and have those conversations, and then you have the skill as a practitioner to individualize and give them what they need at that right time.
Yeah, it's that, like you say, we are so fortunate we get so much data available, and we can get so much feedback like immediately as well. I think it's just up to us to make sure we're choosing what the player needs and what the player wants to look at. And it's a perfect way. Like, I love using gym awares and having that immediate feedback, or force platforms where you can do some jumps on that and they can really understand it, but don't like overdo it. And I think we often just chuck data at players and they're just like, what the hell? Like be really, like, we can use that data and we can collect as much as we possibly can, because we like to spend the time in analysing it and going in it in detail. So the players just really want to look at something and go, yeah, I understand that and I get that. That's what I need to improve, and this is what we're going to do in sessions. Whether it's I need to be more explosive. So we're going to put a gym aware onto a bar in a session and let them see the velocity that they're moving at. And you go, come on, let's get this thing. Or having sessions where you might have a little velocity leaderboard where you've just got everything like individualized in terms of body weight, whatever it is, but they can kind of see like, oh yeah, I'm like quick. I'm moving it quick. I've not done that as quick as I have previously. Or it's just using technology and not overusing it, but just using it to help you, and you give them the feedback that they need, because you say something, then the data backs you up, and then the data then continually can help drive the program, because it's continually showing improvements, progressions, and you just kind of have to make sure that the players are really buying into whatever you're doing, but not to throw everything at them, because they won't respond to that.
Absolutely class, mate. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Matt, just wrap us up. If people want to reach out, they want to ask questions or anything like that, where would you direct them?
Some of the social medias I'm on, Twitter, LinkedIn, probably the main two that I tend to use. I have Instagram, but it's mainly just for my two kids, so that's just spam that you don't need to see.
We could probably do a whole other podcast on parenting and dealing with a newborn.
I said to you, and I'm 3 weeks today into my second child. I've got 2.5-year-old, and that is a topic that needs to be talked about, how to balance work and having 2 kids or 3 kids, well, how many kids you have, even one's hard enough. But just having that, but yeah, so Twitter, LinkedIn, probably the best two. I'm sure you put it up on the bits and bobs that you do. And yeah, I'm more than happy to anyone that has any questions, reach out, anything culture related, anything, like even just whatever. I like to talk to people, and hopefully I can help in some way.
Class. Well, thanks a lot for coming back on, mate. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.